Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech Talk Live. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes here, so just hang on. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes here, about 3 minutes. We'll be started at the hour, so just hang tight. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech Talk Live. We are so excited to have you join us for today's session. But first, we do want to kick things off with just a few things. So some housekeeping. So we'll have dedicated time at the end of the webinar for questions. So please type your questions in the question box in the control panel. We want to make sure to just address your thoughts at the end. You will be redirected to a brief survey at the end of the webinar. Please let us know how we did. Your feedback is very, very important for future Tech Talk Lives. And as always, our on-demand recordings are available within 48 hours of the webinar. We'll make sure you have everything you need, all the links you need to access. So let's get started. Today's session is the keys to defining strategic standards for accessories, connectivity, and security. So let's look at the agenda. We'll be looking at transitioning to a new normal. We're going to be covering the 7 considerations: use case, security, connectivity, consistent policies, support, value, training, and of course, those important next steps. I am pleased to welcome Kevin Quinn, our Senior Director of Engineering. He is our resident Targus expert on all things IT, all things doc. We call him our Targus doctor here. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And also very excited to welcome Andrew Corkill. He is our Global Vice President of Marketing and E-commerce, and he is here to address all of your enterprise and business needs. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Cynthia. Good to see everybody.
Awesome. I think at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you guys and let you guys get started. I'll be back at the end, though, to answer some questions. Thanks,
Perfect.
guys.
Thanks, Cynthia. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining today. We're going to have a great tech talk today. We have a lot of data to go through that is current, actually, to today. We've done some of our own surveys on enterprise clients, making sure we understand what's happening in this world now that we're kind of coming out of COVID, but almost not. We're in this still a weird place. Kevin has a lot of great stuff he's going to cover, so let's get right into it. The way that Targus is really looking at this time right now, it's not just reimagining work, but it's actually reimagining our lives. Everything is changing. We're working differently. We're living differently. We could basically travel anywhere and work. And we're seeing that in the job market. We're seeing unprecedented resignations right now. We're seeing people being able to go pretty much anywhere they want, in any state they want, and just stay in one spot. Some people that I know have gone up to the mountains. They're working there. I'm still in my home office, as you can see. We have not returned to the office yet. We are all still working from home here at Targus. We have great plans to actually kick off a new office space in January. That's still a ways away, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then. So I want to go into a little bit of the data of what's currently happening right now. This is brand new data that Targus has just done a survey, and this is a global survey where we actually went out and we talked to customers and employees in North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand to really understand what's happening right now. This was done in October, so just a few days ago we finished this project. I'm going to give you the fresh data, just the highlights. So we're looking globally. The majority of people, 59%, want to work in a hybrid or remote manner in the future. Right now, only 35% of workers would describe themselves as hybrid or remote. So we're still seeing this discrepancy. And I think some of you as managers or within your own departments and organizations, you may have heard from some employees actually saying, I'm not going to work here unless I could continue working remotely. And I think there's this desire for people wanting to have either remote work or a hybrid way to work in the future. This is reflecting that. So also organizations state that slightly less than half of their employees work in this manner. So 47% are working in this hybrid state. So I think we're going to see further changes here, and things are still going to evolve. A little bit more of the data. Before the pandemic, only 68% of organizations had completed or were undergoing a digital transformation. Now, 85% have completed or are currently undergoing an organizational digital transformation to support mobile workers. And this is why we're having this webinar today. We're still needing to support mobility. We still need to support working from home, and we need to find how are we navigating that? Have we figured it out? Are we still just figuring it out as we go? And Kevin Quinn is going to take us into some more of those details when we look at it. Now let's zoom in just for a second onto the US. This is US research data coming from the same survey. We just broke out the US instead of looking at the whole global pot. So in the US, men are more likely to be hybrid workers, while women are more likely to be home workers. Older people, 55 plus, are more likely to be office-based, while younger people, 16 to 34, are more likely to be home-based. And so you can make your own conclusions. I'm just going to present the data here, but 55 plus, more likely to be at the office, 16 to 34, more likely to be home. Upper level C-level management, more likely to be hybrid. And all I can say is I see this clearly reflected in our own organization in the way that people are looking at work and remote work and what level you are or what age you are and where you are in your career. In the future, 58% of people would like to work hybrid or remote, while 37% would like to work only at the office. This is similar to what we saw on the other survey, and almost half, 47% of people use the same technology and tech accessories for both work and personal. And this is something that we'll talk about. Kevin will go deeper into this. What are you using at home compared to what you use in the office? And by the way, you probably took a bunch of your stuff from the office home when you did that, but have you gone back already? What's happening? So Kevin, let's jump into these 7 considerations.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Interesting data there. You know, one thing I'm taking away from this is I'm actually younger than my chronological age because I work more like the younger people. So can I take that to the bank? I don't know how to work
sure.
My life expectancy. Any rate, hey gang, thanks for tuning in today. Hope we'll give you some good information. And for those of you who saw the last session, we kind of did working from home and some of the standards we recommend and things we recommend there. Some of this might be a little repetitive because, as Andrew mentioned, we're not all back yet, right? Still, a lot of the companies I'm talking to, the data that Andrew shows very, very consistent with what I'm hearing from the large enterprises all the way down to the small ones. And it really depends on the business, of course. You know, Targus, for instance, the people doing our shipping and receiving department, thank God they've been going in, right? Because that's the only way we could ship and receive, right? So, but a lot of us, you know, in engineering and some of the other ops performance people, they can work from home and so forth. So a lot of it has to do with the business, and we understand that. Anyway, I'm going to go through the big, like I said, a lot of this might seem a little repetitive, but there's a little nuance here because we're going to try to slant it more toward that hybrid model or even going back to work. And what we see, because as Andrew said, it looks like a lot of people are still going to be in that hybrid situation or staying in the work from home. So we're going to go through the 7 things. And why 7? Well, that's more than 6. And they wouldn't let me talk about 8 because, as many of you who know me, I love the sound of my own voice and I can talk forever on this stuff. But seriously, I'm going to go through these in a little bit of detail. I talk fast. I am medicated today because I have a wicked cold. So maybe it'll slow me down a little bit, but we're going to have some questions at the end anyway for you. Next slide, Andrew. So use case, any of you talk to me or a lot of times, and this is why I love for people to call me, customers, clients, for Targus, especially around docking stations and peripherals and IO, give us a call. I mean, the biggest thing I ask all of our salespeople is find out what our customers' use cases are. What are they really trying to do? And by that, I mean, especially now in this environment, are they just on-prem? Are they trying to do something, you know, in the hot desking and hoteling? Are they doing work for home? Or as Andrew mentioned, probably more often than not, it's a hybrid model nowadays. And so they're doing both. Now, a lot of you people have heard me say, and if I sound like a little bit of a Target salesman, I apologize, but I've always said you should have a docking station at work and a docking station at home. That being said, we realized very quickly that people may have a decent sized workspace at the office that they don't have at home. You know, I'm spoiled. I'm lucky. I kicked a few of my kids out a while ago, and so I took over one of their bedrooms as my home office, right? And so I have these wonderful ultra wide screens on a Targus docking station, Dock 190, love it, working for me at home. And so I have a great work from home setup, and you kind of see some of it back here too, even including my router, I think. At any rate, I know a lot of people don't have room for that. In fact, one of our Targus salespeople, she goes, I said, well, what dock are you using? She goes, well, I'm using the Dock 419, which is kind of our travel dock. And I said, well, why are you using that? And not like a Dock 190? She goes, well, I don't, you know, me and my husband are both work from home and we're in a studio in Chicago, right? And so in her case, she was using the dock and going off to a television for her external screen and using wireless for her Ethernet. And she had things plugged into the dock for some of the USB hubbing and so forth. So that fit her use case. I'm going to say, IT guys, we love to have just one thing to support or just a few things to support. So whenever possible, use that same desktop dock at home, even if it's overkill in some cases. But a lot of times in the use case, it makes sense to use something a little bit less, like a 419 instead of a dock 190. And I know I'm rattling off model numbers here, but give us a call. We'll help you with those use cases and the solutions. Hoteling and hot desking, you want to use a universal docking station for that. Targus, the dock 1XX, 5XX, 3XX series, those are universal docks. That is, they work with, they don't care what brand. Some of them power also, whether it's Type C or even Type A with the old tip system. That's what we call universal docking stations, and not just brand of PC, but also the same dock for MacBooks, Android devices, Chromebooks, etc. That 190 I mentioned, that's the super dock, right? That does everything. And by the way, if you can get it, buy it. You know, we're all in supply chain problems right now. But hoteling and hot desking, even at home happens. You know, that workstation I mentioned that I'm spoiled to have here at home, my wife uses once in a while. So she'll come in and unplug my wonderful HP Xeon based high-end machine, and she'll plug in her MacBook and go to work doing what she's doing, whether it's buying tickets or spending money on clothes. I'm just being a little funny about my wife there. But anyway, hot desking and hoteling in the enterprise, very common, but it also happens at home when we realize that. And that's where a universal dock makes sense. That being said, when you get down to things like applications that may not work with USB graphics very well, things like gaming or high-end CAD CAM or some of the high-end Photoshop elements doing video editing, you're probably not going to want a universal dock or a USB graphics-based dock. You're probably going to be better served by an alternate mode docking station, including a Thunderbolt docking station, which Targus has those, of course. We have very good product. We like to say why those aren't universal. We are ultra compatible. That is, we validate across these platforms with all these things. So your graphics can drive you into a different technology and a different docking station or adapter and so forth. And then, of course, the rest of your I/O requirements. And by that, I mean things like, do you have USB dongles to plug in, a USB-C flash drive that runs at 10 gig? Do you have wired Ethernet, right? You know, I'm lucky, I'm spoiled here in Southern California. I have structured wiring home, so I plug my wire in. A lot more stable, a lot more secure than using the wireless, right? That kind of thing. So all these things are things to kind of consider in the use case before I go into the next slide. And then, of course, security. Can't do any webinar. I can't do any webinar without talking about security. And I don't think you should listen to any webinar that talks about technical products and doesn't talk about security. Security is the forefront. And we kind of look the other way at security, I think, we as an industry, in the beginning of COVID and coming to work from home. But that wasn't probably a good idea. And that's starting to show. And some of the ransomware attacks you've heard about and some of the clickbait we're seeing like crazy right now. We'd like to think we're one step ahead of the bad actors, but that isn't always the case. So, and excuse me, there's that cold. Security is important and should always be on the forefront of any solution you pick up. And the first tenet of security is physical security. And you see a lot of these big headline breaks or something like that is where somebody left their computer unattended and unlocked and stuff like that. So just simple physical security. Well, the same thing goes with nowadays, especially docking stations, where the computer nowadays is really just the processor and DRAM, and very, very important. And a lot of the security must be paid attention to and is implemented there. But the docking station has a fair amount of I/O. We love to think about the old USB rubber ducky, right? You know, something comes in, a weaponized USB flash drive or something like that. So that security must be taken into account when choosing docking stations and adapters and stuff like that. So, and physical security start with too, because we don't want somebody to take our docking station, go off in the other room and put something in it and put it back, and we never know, right? And Targus has lock slots on our docking stations just that work with your PCs too. So keep in mind, physical security is something to keep in mind. Remote security, being able to use something remotely in a hotel room or on that airport Wi-Fi, that kind of thing, and still be secure. Those are things important to realize with your adapters, and especially around the things that are going to connect to the Ethernet or internet. Security software. Keep in mind, there's some of the simple things, and we've seen this wonderful thing like semantic endpoint. I'm not picking on them. I think they're a wonderful tool. But one of the things we've seen is they default to turning USB ports off. Well, that means anything connected to USB is not going to work, including a docking station. And nowadays that we have only one port on some of these client machines, you're going to want that port to work, right? And so that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is think about Thunderbolt in a security sense, because at the end of the day, Thunderbolt is the PCIe bus on the outside of the machine. Is that more secure than maybe USB? And I know we love to see the Tom Cruise movies where they plug USB flash drive in and get all the data off the computer, but that's not so easy to do anymore. Might be a little easier to do in Thunderbolt. And so look up Thunderclap, that kind of thing. Multi-factor authentication, are you using it? VPNs, are you insisting your users use it, especially now that they're work from home, because there's so many different ISPs out there and you don't know where they're going through router wise, or if there's a man in the middle somewhere. So you want to get that VPN engaged as soon as possible and force it whenever you can, especially my government customers and my high-end financial customers, enforce VPNs. Data going back and forth, data at rest should be encrypted always, right? That helps a lot with some of these ransomware attacks we've seen and so forth. And then the big bullet, and you're going to hear me harp on this a little bit more later, is training. Not only training people to use these tools and the VPN and how to get on it and how to use multi-factor authentication, but why is it important? Not just to the enterprise, not just to the company, which, cynically we like to think about, but also for them personally, especially their privacy and so forth. So there's real good reasons to implement a lot of these things, not just for the enterprise or the company you're working for, but for yourself. So keep that in mind as we talk about security. Going on to the next slide. And I'm going to ramp it up here and go a little bit faster here because I'm looking at my time. Connectivity requirements. Obviously, if you're looking at a docking station, like I said earlier, if you got an Ethernet port on that, that's what Targus calls a docking station. That's going to be best. That wire is still more reliable, more secure than wireless. And yes, I know all the ways to tap into both and the whole bit there, but at the end of the day, wired is more secure than wireless, and generally better performance too, the whole bit, especially going on the internet. So whenever you can, use the wire instead of the wireless. You'll hear me say that all the time. Remember, connectivity and security aren't exclusive. That's always the fight in security, the convenience versus the secure, right? Because ultra secure is you don't get on the web, right? Nobody can get anything done that way. So basically, you want to find that balance of security to your company's requirements, to your application requirements, to your industry requirements with that connectivity convenience. ISP requirements. I'm seeing a lot of people when they work from home, a lot of ISPs proxy things, and sometimes that can cause problems. I see it with my own applications at home where I'm on a proxy and I thought I've updated everything on a cloud app or something like that. My database is in the cloud, and I'm talking mostly my own secure stuff. Everything's fine. I go to work and the data's not there, right? I get a totally different thing. Or I'm on the VPN, I get a totally different thing. So beware, proxies can change how your cloud apps work and so forth. Minimum connection speed. A lot of apps require speed. We like to think of things like streaming and watching our Netflix, Hulu, whatever, and not to sound biased there or anything, but make sure you have the minimum connection speed to get your work done, especially if you're using those cloud apps. And I do a lot of stuff where I have large file transfers. So I have a pretty good ISP, thank God, here in Southern California, but I know in the rural areas, that's a little harder to do. It's even harder to get on the internet sometimes, right? So keep in mind, you want to have a good connection speed, not just in the LAN, but over the internet. Compatibility needs. We love selling universal docking stations to Targus. That is because they work, like I mentioned earlier, cross-platform brand, all of that stuff. So that's the wonderful thing about them. But they meet, I'm going to say 90+% of the use cases I see out there, and most of them in the enterprise, and certainly a lot of consumer ones. But they're not for gaming, and they're not for the high-end CAD cam and some of the things you might want to use a Thunderbolt or alternate mode docking station for. So keep that in mind. And then power. People forget about this one all the time. Make sure you have good power. In the United States, for the most part, we do have good power, but there are brownouts and blackouts here in Southern California, right? That's another thing that happens. We get them because of the fires when it's fire season, that kind of thing. So we're not 100% uptime on power. And so you may want to have a UPS or something like that or anything. And then some of these other countries, they're lucky some days when the power's on in some places. So keep in mind power, and I'm talking internationally now, is something to consider with your solutions and so forth. Next slide. Consistent policies. Consistency is something that I love to see. Maybe because I'm an engineer, maybe it's OCD, something, I don't know. Consistency, I think, is important. And by that, I mean, you want to have consistent policies. In other words, make sure your security policies don't change when you work from home versus enterprise. And that's something I have seen, and it bugs the heck out of me. In other words, when I go into an enterprise, I'll just use Targus as an example. Targus enterprise security is very, very good. We're really good at it. And I've played with it and tried to test it. And I frustrate our own internal IT guys doing that sometimes. But then when I go work from home, there's some things I can do that I couldn't do in the enterprise. And that's something that I've showed them, because I'm not a bad actor. I'm a white hat hacker. And so I'll show them, hey guys, I shouldn't be able to do this, but I can. And they'll fix that. But I've seen that with a lot of enterprises where they have real good enterprise security, but not much at work from home. So make sure you keep that consistent in the whole bit. Anytime you're picking a solution, I put identify stakeholders there. And that means find those use cases, but talk to those users. And then also talk to the people that are going to be paying for whatever solution you have. Get the management buy-in, make sure you have the budget there. I can't tell you how many times I see people come up with this wonderful, elaborate, almost Rube Goldberg machine solution that costs way more than the budget for what they're trying to do, and overkill, and meets every corner case, but really doesn't need to meet every corner case. And you can do something for half the price that meets 99% of them, that kind of thing. Define the needs collaboratively. That means going to your users. Curate product catalogs is a fancy way of saying is try to be consistent, try to find the products that you can use across your enterprise, whether it's work from home or work from the enterprise. And like I said, if you can use the same docking station, for instance, in both, that's ideal. But I realize that it's not always practical and pragmatic and so forth. But just try to be as consistent as possible. Don't have a limited set of products that work and you can support and maintain. And be duplicatable. That one comes up because I like to say, worldwide, a lot of our customers, Targus, are worldwide customers. And the nice thing about Targus and selling Targus and being involved with Targus and suggesting Targus solutions, whether it's a power docking station or our power supplies themselves, they're all worldwide compatible. All of our power supplies are. And so really we change the plug out to go with the outlet in the particular geography, but it also meets all the requirements for safety and works worldwide. So that's the cool thing about a lot of Targus solutions. Little plug there. And I think most customers are getting it away, but be careful. Some of the stuff you might buy on your favorite detailer may not work worldwide or have some of those safety regulations considered. Next chart. Support requirements. This is near and dear to me because I'm in support. I'm the doctor, right? That's what I do. I support our docking stations and IO. And IO is becoming a bigger support challenge, let's say, because most of the machines nowadays have divested themselves of the IO. Like I mentioned earlier, some of these machines are just a single port, right? Some kind of type C facing down that may or may not do power delivery like you think. We don't know if it's Thunderbolt or alt mode or just USB. So all of those things need to be considered. And IO is becoming more and more important, more and more complex, especially when we work from home. We're using cameras, doing webinars, things like this the tools were always there, but we really didn't push them, didn't really use them, didn't utilize them to the fullest extent. We're starting to see that now with IO. And so buy good enterprise class IO solutions for docking, for hubs, for adapters, for cameras. I'm going to say buy Targus because that's what we sell, those enterprise class machines. And then we also have our Hyper brand, a little bit more consumers, but some of it's very applicable to these enterprise applications. But Targus is where you want to go with a good enterprise brand. Make sure it has good technical support. And that's something at Targus we really like to say we have. Excuse me, that cold again. Is people like me. I'm not just the only doctor. I have a team of application engineers that work with me. And we find problems, and we have no problem troubleshooting things for you and supporting them. We support our products. That's a differentiator at Targus, as opposed to when you buy something on an e-tailer from a company that may or may not be here next week. We're going to be here 36 years and full lifetime warranties in some of our products, and a lot of them 3 years anyway. So we're there to support them and make sure they work. Our customer service reps, very technical savvy a lot of times. So a lot of times they can help you with solving your problem, especially if it's on the client side that you don't even need an application or an engineer for to fix. A lot of our products support remote management. If you haven't seen our MirrorLogic platform, take a look at it. I'm not going into it today, but MirrorLogic is a way we're handling that remote process of remotely maintaining, sustaining, et cetera, all the utilities of a docking station and all the things downstream attached to it. And upgrades and updates, we handle that through the client process on the Targus docking stations and our adapters, which makes things a lot easier than having to have a separate process for maintaining these kind of things. So those are the kind of things, we like to differentiate ourselves at Targus. And I know I sounded a little bit like a Targus salesman before, but I'm going to say look for those things in any solution you're going to go out there and look for. Next slide, please. Cost, I say value, and I don't want to sound like Targus is high priced. We're not, but we're value priced. In other words, you see my little saying down there. If you're paying less, it's often because you are the product tester, the salesperson, and the customer service. And I know I go on the same Amazon sites and see these in other retailers and see these solutions. And our salespeople come to me once in a while and say, Kevin, here's a dock for like $2 and ours is $100, right? And I'm using funky numbers here. But what I'm getting at is if you're paying less, you're probably getting a lot less, especially in the testing and validation area. And that's where enterprise suppliers like Targus kind of shine. We make sure we validate across platform. And in the end, I'm going to tell you to test things in your own environment anyway. But the enterprise class kind of stuff, it has that additional testing, has that additional support, and that's something you want to look for in your solutions, and that's value. It's harder to talk about this in today's time frame because nowadays I say if you can find a docking station or an adapter, buy it because of the supply chain issues we have right now. But in all seriousness, look for that enterprise class product. Look for something that comes with good support and is maintainable and sustainable, and not just a good warranty. And look for those brand names and those enterprise class solutions. You'll find the Targus branded stuff is enterprise class. And even a lot of our hyper stuff, while it can be used in the enterprise, is kind of enterprise class too. So keep that in mind that you want to look for that enterprise class branding and support model for your enterprise class solutions, whether it's work from home or in the enterprise. Next chart, please. Training. I said I was going to harp on this earlier, and I'm going to do it right now. Basically, a lot of solutions come to us. It happens to me at Targus. It's happened to me at every other company where an update comes or a new tool comes, and I'm just supposed to figure out how to use it, right? Same with a docking station, and I see this at customers. They just put out docking stations. That's what you will use. Great. Okay. How do I use it? And I've seen so many underutilized tools out there, and not just the PCs. And maybe it's because we started that industry that way. I mean, there's still hooks and features and so forth in both Windows and all the applications in Office and all the applications that go with Windows and Mac and et cetera that I've never learned, right? And somebody will go, why don't you just do it this way? I'm like, oh, didn't know that was there, right? That kind of thing. But that happens with a lot of the solutions I see out there from Targus and docking stations and so forth. So I'm saying, don't just deploy things, teach your users how to use them and why it's good for them to use them. Docking stations are a real good example. I think most people nowadays, maybe because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid working at Targus, understand the purpose and the reason to have a docking station, especially when it comes to having multiple video monitors and so forth, and the IO that comes with it. And now that these units don't have the IO on them, so they kind of understand that value. But still, a lot of training can be done why to use a particular docking station, especially if it has a good collar space for what they do in their job function or something like that. Simple things like that. So consistent training, security training. I mentioned that earlier. Not only how to use the tools and why you should use how to use the VPN or how to use the password vault, but why you should do it. And why that's good, not just for the enterprise, but the user. Always a good idea to do security training. Live rollouts. Why are you doing a rollout? Why are you doing an upgrade? Why are we doing it this way? On-demand training. This webinar will be on demand. Some of you are probably looking at it on demand. We're live today, but it's looking at it down the road. And then accountability. So one of the things I see a lot of times is people throw out training, push training, and never go check for learning. So what I mean by accountability is go check for learning, whether it's a quiz or something like that, and don't penalize people for not learning necessarily, right? I mean, a lot of it has to do with the teacher and how good that is, right? So, but make sure that people are learning. Check for learning is what I really mean by accountability. Next slide, please. All righty, so in summary, I went through a lot of stuff there, and I know we're going to have some question and answer here in just a moment. But just as a reminder, define your use cases. That's the number one thing you want to do, and find the stakeholders and the people that are going to have the budget and ultimately got to use these tools and pay for them. Define your security requirements. Can't say anything without saying security nowadays, right? That's very, very important and should be. Develop product catalogs that you want to be consistent, especially worldwide and duplicatable and the whole bit. So keep that in mind. And then train and check for learning. So in summary, that's the things I see you want to do when you're looking for any kind of docking station, adapter, or any device down the road. not just we like this Lenovo or this Dell PC, but make sure it does the things that most of your users are going to need it for. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cynthia, and I'm not going anywhere, Cynthia and Andrew, and I'm here to answer questions.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kevin.
Well, lots of great information there, guys. Let's take a look in the chat. So do remember, we have about like 5 minutes right now. If you have any questions that you want our Targus doctor to answer, or Andrew. One of the questions I'm seeing says, what's the best way to present some of the use cases mentioned to my team?
What is the best way to present some of the use cases? Well, I do have a blog, Targus, that has a blog where I put some of the things there. I do some videos. Some of them are really good if you can't sleep, by the way. They're long and very intricate.
Late night reading.
Yeah. But in general, we're here to do that at Targus. But if you don't want to take advantage of that or have us do it, how do you present those use cases? I have to think about that one, to be honest.
I guess we have the consultations too, where you can kind of walk them through that, right?
Yep. Get a hold of us. Get a hold of your Target salesperson. That's going to be the general answer. Yeah.
Okay. We have another question here. You mentioned the abbreviation I.O a lot. Could you explain that?
Input output. That means your things that do input and things that take output. We think of monitors as output devices because they're presenting data to us. We think of mice as input devices because we're clicking into a screen or something like that, or a keyboard is an input device, for instance, that kind of thing. I/O is the general term for input output. And what I meant by that is, divested of the I/O. So many clients now, they're thin and light. But the other thing that people forget is they're really just a lot of times just a processor and DRAM, and they're good processors and DRAM. I don't want to say anything slighting PCs and MacBooks and so forth, but I/O is becoming more and more important. And there's various standards. I mean, I love to say USB-C. The C stands for confusion, right? And so that's something at Targus we try to unconfuse and help with that, and help you pilot whether it's going power delivery or one of the alternate modes, or just USB or above, all of that stuff. So get a hold of us about that too. A lot going on in the I/O world right now, more than I would say in the processor and DRAM world. I mean, DRAM is always going to get faster, processors always get faster. There is a little bit of processor war going on right now between Intel and ARM, right? I mean, you're seeing Apple kind of divested themselves of Intel by going to their M1 processor and maybe not being Thunderbolt in the future, Thunderbolt compatible, maybe not Thunderbolt. You can kind of read between the lines there. You're seeing the Snapdragon, ARM-based Snapdragon stuff used for PCs now, not just phones from Qualcomm, right? That kind of thing. So we're seeing a little bit of a processor war going on because the processors got fast enough probably a long time ago, and the DRAM's there and abundant, well, with the exception of right now, but generally available. And so it's an I/O world. It's us being able to talk to our computers and take data from them faster and faster now.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin. Last question we have here, and it says, what are some of the cost savings for IT standards?
Anytime, cost is, I talk in terms of value, right? Is it okay if I take this one, Andrew?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. I know you're the marketing guy. I just don't want to sound too marketing here or too salesy, but when I talk about cost, because I'm an engineer, but there are some things to consider as an engineer around cost. I mean, the big one is maintenance or sustainability, right? Maintainability, right? If you have a product that maybe it costs $10, but it takes you $100 a week to support it, that's not a good thing, right? When you could have spent $100 and maybe spend $10 a week supporting it. I don't know, one way or the other. So you want to look at how often do I have to touch this thing? How often do I have to maintain it? How do I do that? Can it be done automated? Can it be done in mass? That kind of thing. So, and that goes back to kind of duplicatable too. If you can have just one thing that you have to support versus 10 things you have to support, you're going to be more efficient. So it really comes down to efficiency and maintaining and sustaining products. And not just the initial cost, because I know a lot of things come out there with a very attractive initial cost. I see them on eBay and Amazon, et cetera, and Walmart.com. Trying not to be biased here. I see them out there too. but I see them from companies that I'm not sure they're going to be in business next month anyway. But also, I do realize, being in the industry, I do realize that they are what they are, and that's it. If they don't work for you, great, they'll give you your money back. But if you really need something to work, that's where you want to go with an enterprise class supplier like Targus or something like that. So cost is a value to me, and you want to look at more than just the initial cost, if that makes sense to answering that question, Cynthia.
Yeah, Kevin, I just had one thing to add there. And cost, if you think about it from the IT team's perspective, like how can you save cost on like all of your equipment over time? And what we've seen a lot of enterprise customers doing is going to the flexible workspaces, because then you can have fewer workspaces, but you're accommodating more workers with that. So now instead of having 50 desks on a floor, you can have 25 desks on a floor, and you have a rotation happening, or not everybody's there every day, and we're in hybrid working anyway. You need to have that flexibility now. That's where you can save money overall. You don't have to skimp on things either. You can have a really well outfitted, flexible workspace. Make sure it's universal, and you're going to save money over time.
See, and that's why you're in marketing and sales, and I'm just here. I didn't even think of the hot desking hotel. That's the number one cost saver. Go to a universal solution when you can. I'm thinking of the solution. That's it. Great. Yeah, very, very good point. Hoteling, hot desking. I mean, I love talking about a customer. I don't want to say their name or initials anymore, but they were able to get rid of one whole floor of a high-rise building, and that saved them. Not just that they're outfitting it, but they also have to clean it. HVAC costs for it, power it, all of those things. So yeah, hoteling, hot desking makes a lot of sense. And I know people are afraid of COVID, and that's very good sense. But we've always had that worry about germs being spread in those situations. But even with our Mirror Logic system, we're finding ways to kind of to work that, to stagger desks, or let people know this desk was just used, so maybe you don't want to sit there, right? That kind of thing, just like you at a restaurant or something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Great perspective. Obviously looking at cost savings with the past, but also thinking about it in terms of the future. So that sums it up for today's Tech Talk. We hope you found it insightful. We do want to let you know that we will be streaming this. This is on-demand content, so it's going to be available within 48 hours. Here's a direct link to access if you want to share it with your team, if you want to watch it later again, or accompany it with some late night reading. With those blogs, you can get that information here. Next slide, please. And then also, if you want to request a consultation, you can have one of our Targus experts walk you through the needs of your enterprise business. So here's a link as well. Guys, thanks for your time, and thanks for joining us.
Hey,
Great.
thanks for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one.
See ya.